I'm David Sams, and on this special edition of the Contagious Influencers of America podcast, I'm sitting down with Big George Foreman ahead of his new movie.
Listen to me, George. You got a punch like I've never seen.
Hunger was your crown. What do you mean by that?
Hunger. That's what I always had to fight. I remember there was never enough to eat in my home. And then, of course, I got into boxing. I hungered to get those fights over, get a knockout.
Foreman is the new heavyweight champion of the world.
This story is one for the ages, and George Foreman has waited years for the right moment to bring it to the big screen. Now it's finally happening nationwide on April 28th.
George Foreman. Got a lot of names to title myself. Former heavyweight boxing champion of the world, grandfather, and great-grandfather, face of the George Foreman Grill, and a minister at the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Big George Foreman, the movie, tells the incredible true story of comebacks and second chances.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this food. You know exactly what this family needs.
Growing up poor as dirt put a chip on his shoulder.
George should change his name from Foreman to Poor Man.
And ultimately, it gave him an edge in the ring.
What's my name now, fool?
From amateur to Olympic gold medalist and future heavyweight boxing champion of the world, George had it all. Until he almost didn't.
Who said that? Nobody said nothing, George. Your heart stopped. We thought you was dead.
I was. The Lord changed my life.
Foreman put up his boxing gloves and made his way to the pulpit.
I want to spread the word of God and what I saw.
I started this youth center.
Hey, fella, come on in. Come on in, enjoy yourself.
Power company said we never paid the bill.
Really?
When the money tree withered, he had no choice but to get back in the ring.
There's only two things I know how to do. That's box and preach. The preaching won't pay the bills.
And win it all again, becoming the oldest and most improbable heavyweight boxing champion of the world ever.
Now, or it's never.
And let's not forget about that George Foreman grill.
Mr. Foreman, that funny little grill deal you signed is starting to generate some substantial checks.
Really? Now, I'm just surprised they chose a big old fat guy like me to sell a deal to help people get lean.
And now I'm so honored and excited to bring you this one-on-one sit-down interview so you can get to know George Foreman and his story ahead of his film coming to theaters April 28th.
Hallelujah! Woo!
George, here we are. We're basically a month out to the debut of your movie. I got to ask you, are you feeling more pressure a month out, the premiere of your movie, or did you feel more pressure when you were facing Ali in the Rumble in the Jungle?
Hey, the rumble in the jungle. There was not only pressure, but there were punches coming after me. But it is a lot. It's a wonderful thing. This kind of pressure is wonderful.
So tell me what it's like leading up to the debut of the movie. How are you feeling?
I was able to really glimpse through the movie and had a lot of moments where tear-jerkers, if you know what I mean. And I was satisfied, and I got something out of the movie. And once you do that with yourself, then it's like me and the grill. I enjoyed the grill. I knew everybody else would enjoy it.
So when you're a month out for something, how do you deal with the? Do you feel the stress, the anxiety, the anticipation? How do you deal with that?
There's a lot of things come to your mind when you think about, boy, the movie is a month away from now. And you start thinking, I hope they like me. Then you start thinking, well, I hope they like that actor who's playing me. But the pressure is low key.
Why now? Why the movie now? I remember years and years ago we met in Beverly Hills. You were there with all your sons at the, I think it was the Beverly Wilshire.
Yeah.
Did you always hold court there?
Yeah, I love the Beverly Wilshire hotels, but then and the Four Seasons, of course.
Yeah.
Los Angeles and hotels are my fun. That's where I get a lot of fun at.
So I remember at that time I was doing some work with William Morris, And Jim Wyatt, remember Jim? He was the chairman.
Yeah.
He said, "Man, there's a guy that you gotta do a project with, either TV, because I was in the TV business, or a movie."
Yeah.
And he took me over and introduced you, or introduced me to you. But of course, it was years later that you wrote the book, and then you decided to do the film. But I want to know what it was that earned your trust when Rich Peluso and Sonia Firm came to you and wanted to do this film. What was it that earned your trust?
Well, I've had a big vision, and most of it is about evangelistic. To tell my story is a story about what God does for a person. Every chance I've gotten for the last 45 years, I've tried to tell that story. When they said do it in a movie, I realized the movie will outlive me. So that encouraged me to really get out there and do the movie and work with it.
Let's talk about the psychology of fighting. I want to get into your head a little bit, because I've watched the Rumble in the Jungle with Ali, you and Ali, and I noticed it seemed like it took forever for you to come out of your dressing room. I mean, were you just playing with his head? What was going on there? And then of course, when you're in the fight in the ring, was he playing with your head a little bit? And I noticed at one point he shouted out, where he said, "Is that all you got?" I mean, how much psychology goes into a fight?
To be honest with you, there is no psychology in boxing matches. Not at all. Once you get into the ring, the lights come on, and a guy starts throwing punches at your head, everything disappears, especially psychology. You better have some physical ability to protect yourself. And that goes through your mind. How do I protect myself?
Now you came in, I think I had read that you went through 8 fights, and you ended them all in 2 rounds. As you led up to that big fight with Ali. Were you overconfident?
The one thing I have to be honest with you, I was really complacent. I knew I was going to win that boxing match. I didn't think I was going to win it. I knew it. I figured first, second, or third round, I'm going to knock Muhammad Ali out. Then first, second, third, fourth, all those rounds started to pass. I started to panic because I had this big punch. I always looked for a knockout, and the knockout didn't happen within 4 rounds. I knew something strange was happening.
So when did you realize that this wasn't going to end well?
I guess about the 8th round, I got knocked down. Got a counter punch. I'm on the canvas, and I'm waiting for the ref to count to 8, and I was going to jump up. When I did jump up, the fight was over. Laying there on the canvas, I thought, this guy's been covering up all night. Now he's going to try to come in for the finish, and I'm going to finish him. When I jumped up, it was all over. The fight was over.
Take me back to your childhood, which is really well depicted in the movie. It really spells out. You went to school many days without lunch. I mean, that came across so clear that you didn't have much. Tell me about your family and what it was like growing up in the early years.
Well, my mother brought her family in from East Texas, Marshall, Texas, to Houston, and the next thing was getting jobs. And if you got one job, you knew that wasn't going to take care of everything. So she got 3 jobs, and there wasn't much time with the family. And most of the jobs was about feeding the kids, and then it was about expenses for the home. There just wasn't much left over. Mm-hmm. And so it created a rough time for my mom and me. But then, look, most people in America have a rough time, but we make it.
I read someplace that you said that hunger was your crown. What do you mean by that?
Hunger. That's what I always had to fight. I remember there was never enough to eat in my home. Never enough to eat. So even my family would get at the table with me and eat fast because they knew if I finished mine first, I would take theirs. So I was always trying to fight, had that hunger in me. And then, of course, I got into boxing. I hungered to get those fights over, get a knockout, get it over with. Win an Olympic gold medal. I was hungry Everyone said the greater fighters before me had gotten an Olympic gold medal. I was hungry for that. And then to be heavyweight champion of the world, I sacrificed everything in the world so that I could be the heavyweight champ of the world. I gave up everything. I didn't go to parties. I never had alcohol or anything that would throw me off. Hungry for the championship of the world. Then, of course, I found something else.
So let's talk a minute about would you consider yourself to be a street thug? I mean, what?
As a teenager, I was running the streets. I was on my way here today thinking about Lyons Avenue. There, I started to hang out with guys. You want money, you want to buy things, and you don't have a job. So I started mugging people. I was a thief. I was a genuine thief, running the streets, trying to rob people, thinking that was the only way to do it. I mean, I didn't look down on myself because so many other guys were doing the same thing.
So it was normal?
It was, for me, it was normal. But my mom and her sisters would meet occasionally. And on the weekend, they'd talk because they were all children of a sharecropper. And they seemed to be proud of that. And they'd always boast, Papa never had a thief in the family. None of Papa's children ever went to jail. And I'd hear that over and over every week. And so as I'm stealing, running from the police, hiding, all of those thoughts came back to me. And I didn't realize that I had become a thief, something that Papa had never had in the family, so to speak.
And where was your dad in all this?
My mom and dad broke up early in life. He tried, but then he had problems too. And my mother was working, and they just weren't together. So I didn't have any guidance from my father early on.
So your mom played both mom and dad?
My mom played both mom and dad.
Wow.
One day she'd try to hug you, the next day she'd try to break your back for doing wrong things. She was a good mom.
So tell me about a time she broke your back.
She was so afraid that I would get killed, so sometimes she'd look at me and say, I better spank you now, because I know you're going to do it. And she'd do it, and I didn't do it. That's what she had to do. And she'd come home from work worried about me more than anything else, having a son that she could look at me and tell I was going to be problems. And she did the best she could, but problems came anyway.
So what was the turning point to get away from all this and to make something of yourself? What happened?
Well, one night I was running from the police, and they closed in on me, out mugging and doing bad things, and I crawled under a house to hide from the police. I don't know how I got under this house. And I sat there and listened to the police going around the corner looking for me. They were chasing us three. My two buddies had gotten away. And then I got frightened. I thought, boy, I'd seen movies where if they can't find you, they're going to send dogs to sniff you out. And I covered myself with smut that fell from underneath the house to make certain the dogs wouldn't smell me, head to toe, even around my face. And I heard those words again from my mom. Papa never had any thieves in the family. No one of Papa's children had gone to jail. And that shook me. It took that mud and that slime and that sewage to wake me up. And I decided right then I would never steal anything from anyone. And when I crawled from under the house that night, my life changed. I said, what am I going to do now? All I knew was stealing. And I dropped out of school, of course.
And that's a great scene in the movie. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's well done. So then you went to the Job Corps, and how did that change everything?
Well, I heard a commercial. The great Jimmy Brown and Johnny Unitas said, if you're looking for a second chance, that was this Job Corps. And I went in, I joined, looking for a second chance. And I gone all the way to Grants Pass, Oregon, learning vocational skills, even reading books. My whole life changed. Then in the afternoon, I found boxing. There was a radio show. Muhammad Ali was fighting Joe Frazier. Muhammad Ali was Cassius Clay then fighting Floyd Patterson. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And all the kids looked at me in the day room and said, George, you're always picking on people. You're so tough. Why don't you become a boxer?
Great qualifications, right?
Yeah. And I said, okay, I'll show you. Not really realize they wouldn't even see me. So I moved graduated to Pleasanton, California, Parks Job Corps Center. I met the coach, Doc Brodus. Told him I wanted to be a boxer. He challenged me to come down. Okay, you big enough, ugly enough, come on down. And I did go down. And he put me in the ring maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, and I made a fool of myself. I just couldn't hit the guy. I fell down. And the kids laughed at me because it was in front of a crowd. They laughed at me. I said, I'll never do it. But he stayed on my back, Doc Brodus. He said, I thought you wanted to be a boxer. I said, I don't have any shoes. He said, wait here. When he came back, he had boxing shoes for me. I couldn't get out. He kept telling me I could be I can be an Olympic gold medalist if I stopped fighting in the streets. And I did.
And what'd you have, 25 or so fights before?
I had 25 boxing matches as an Olympian. As an amateur.
And then all of a sudden you're in the Olympics.
No, I'm sorry. I had a total of 25 amateur boxing matches. 4 of those matches were in the Olympics.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
I mean, when you started out boxing, did you have any idea that you'd end up in the Olympics?
I didn't have any class, any style, but I had this punch, and I realized if I closed my eyes and would swing as hard as I could, I'd get a knockout. And then I'd always boast about how I did it, never knowing how I did it.
Now, did you expect to, after the Olympics, so you have the gold medal, proudly wearing that, and it was a difficult time in America at that point, in the late 60s, of course. But you proudly waved that American flag that we all remember in that scene, and it's also well depicted in the movie. But going pro, going up against the greatest of all time, how did that come about? Did you get hit so hard in the Olympics that that it knocked some sense in you to go pro, or how did that come about?
Well, I didn't want to become a professional boxer. I had a job with the Job Corps, and they encouraged me to go to college, and that was going to be my career. Mm-hmm. So I wore that Olympic gold medal everywhere. I didn't believe I could win it, but it was the most amazing thing in my life. I'd never had a dream to come true. And then finally people said, George, you could make some money if you turned professional. That didn't ring a bell with me. Finally someone said, George, if you turn pro, you may earn $1 million. I said, aha, I'll do it. And I started off on my professional career, one fight after another.
So it really, truly was about the money at that point.
It was all about the money.
Yeah.
The gold medal was so inspiring. I had a jump on all the other amateurs at a gold medal. But they kept friends and family and everyone encouraging me, man, you could make $1 million. I had not learned to count that far.
So you became a heavyweight champ of the world, not once but twice. How would you compare the road the first time around to the second time around? Was it very similar, or was it dramatically different?
First time around, I was the champ that my managers and trainers made of me. I had to start from the bottom, learn how to fight. I learned how to be managed and told what to do. And then once I became champion of the world, I beat Joe Frazier for the championship of the world. That gave me once you become champion of the world, it's like the ghosts of Jack Dempsey, Jack Johnson, you name the champions, they come alive in you. I got big real quick. There's no one to tell you what it is like to be heavyweight champ of the world. You have to be it to understand it. So I became the champ of the world. Of course, the second time around, I was literally a grandfather. I raised 10 children. My whole life was built around family. So the second time around, it wasn't so exciting as it was the first time. It was all about, okay, you got to pay these bills. You got to go to your children's open house. You got to make sure they're in college. Oh, there's so many things. Nothing like the first time. It was all about me the first time.
And how did you process I know the first time around, it seemed like that anger drove you a lot. You know, that you just had to beat this guy up, right? Did that mindset change the second time around? Was it different?
The first time around, I was trying to knock everybody out, trying to get those fights over as quickly as I could, for fear they may get me. I played baseball for a while, and I was always afraid that ball was going to hit me. Those pitchers were throwing. So when I got in the ring, I said, if I don't get these guys quick, they're going to hit me. And then you pick up a little anger as you go. Anger, because I met Sonny Liston, who was my role model. He would just look at people and look like he didn't have a friend in the world. And I said, that's the way you got to be to become heavyweight champ of the world. I copied him a little bit. And that second time around, there was never a punch in anger. Never a punch in anger. Because I started the George Foreman Youth Center trying to get all of the anger out of children. And I showed them how to be a boxer without it. So as I started eating the same product I was selling, you can be a boxer. You don't have to be angry with the world. You can actually be a good athlete. Boxing is the grandfather of all sports. And I took another glimpse at my life and found out I didn't need anger at all. Just needed to be in condition.
So for somebody right now who's fighting to get to the top of whatever it is they're trying to get to the top of, and they're full of anger, they're full of I've got to have this to prove something. What would you tell them, based on your experience of getting to the top twice, that could help them overcome the anger that they're going through, so that maybe they would have the same fortunate climb to the top that you had the second time around? What could you teach them?
Well, it's about fight. You got to fight. And the second time around, I learned to fight for my family, fight to make certain I would never lose my faith, fight. The whole fight was just trying to be the best human being possible. And if you have that in your mind, you can make it. When someone would meet me, I didn't want them to say, oh, George was nice, but someone else was nicer I'd met before. And you got to fight to do all of that. So the fighting continues, but for a different cause. You don't need anger at all. There's no anger in a true fight.
Good, that's good.
You lose your way when you get angry.
Jimmy Young. Okay, I want to focus on this a little bit because this was the life-changing incident. Talk to me about that. What happened after that fight?
I'd already been heavyweight champ of the world, and this time I was #1 contender again to force the champion to fight me, Muhammad Ali again. So I went into the fight with Jimmy Young, St. Juan, Puerto Rico, to prove to the world I could go 12 rounds and that I had stamina. There would be no more dope or rope, dope, and all of that. And I'd gone 12 rounds. But Jimmy Young survived. I didn't knock him out. As a matter of fact, he knocked me down. I got up quickly, but it was the most hot I'd ever been in my life. St. Juan, Puerto Rico. I heard that the guy who ran the arena cut out the air conditioning so the people would buy more beer. But it was hot that night. I waited around after losing a 12-round decision, went back to my dressing room to cool off, and that's when things really changed for me.
And what happened?
I went back to the dressing room trying to cool off, walking back and forth. It's like a racehorse. You're not supposed to sit down after you've been so hot. And as I was walking back and forth, I started thinking, like I normally thought, well, you don't have to worry about this boxing match. You're still George Foreman. And I thought about all the money I had. I can go home right now to my ranch and I can retire and die. I said, how did that get in there? Because I'm thinking, like I always thought, you don't have to worry about anything. Who cares about that stupid boxing match? I can retire now. I have money. I can go home and retire and die. It kept die. How did that get in there again? And I couldn't fight death out of my conversation. I said, I don't need to die. I got everything to live for. Look at me. I got my muscles. I got my ranch. I got my money. And then as I'm walking back and forth and saying those things, like discouraging me, I said, well, I don't know where that thought coming of death come in there. And I heard a voice, because I'd always played that stuff, going around churches, talking and faking like I had religion. I heard a voice that, you believe in God, why are you scared to die? And I was afraid. I started walking fast then. I said, I got to keep myself loose. I don't want to die. And so I realized, I said, I'm in this place here where I got everything all saved up and money. I don't want to die in a dirty old smelly dressing room. And I'd heard about people dying in locker rooms from sports and everything. And there I was fighting for my life. I started walking fast. I said, maybe this is just some thought. And I heard the voice say, you believe in God, why are you afraid to die? And I was scared, scared to die. So I tried to make a deal. When you got a lot of money, you're always making deals with people. Because I knew that was God. I said, I'm still George Foreman. I can give money to cancer, for charity and to cancer. And I heard a voice within my thoughts say, I don't want your money, I want you. Boy, did I was scared, because no one had ever turned down money in my life. I knew this was something different. God didn't go for the deal, and I knew it was God, and that I was God, and I was about to die. So I said, God, I believe in you, but not enough before I could say to die. I was gone. In a split second, I was gone. My leg gave out on me. I remember saying, hey, y'all, I'm fixing to. Before I could say die, that was it. Over my head, under my feet, all around me was nothing. If you ask me, what did you see? I saw nothing but the most hopelessness I've ever seen in my life. There was just pure nothing. And I looked there, it was like a dump yard of every sad thought I'd ever had in my life. Just a dump yard. And you could understand that someone else was out there too. What did I see? Nothing. And that's the most frightening thing in the world, is nothingness. Just discouragement. And I got mad. I got mad because I told someone about there's God or something. I got mad and I looked around. I said, I don't care if this is death. I still believe in God. And I remember looking over my shoulder at my real estate investment, my cars, safety deposit box. They just crumbled like ashes. I said, all those years I've been working for those things, and it was gone. And there I was. I don't care if this is death. I still believe in God. When I said that, like a gigantic hand reached in and pulled me out of nothing. I mean, nothing. Like someone dropped you in the sea, and there's no ship, there's no land, there's no need in hoping, because there is nothing. And I said, I don't care if this is death. I still believe there's a God. And like a gigantic hand just pulled me out. And I was alive again in that dressing room. You could feel blood flowing through you. And evidently they had picked me off the floor and put me on the dressing room table. And as I lay there thinking and everything, and my doctor was behind me, I told Dr. West, he traveled with me, move your hand, Doc, because the thorns on his head are making him bleed. Everybody looked at me like, what's going on here? And my masseur, Mr. Fuller, I said, move your hand. He's bleeding where they crucified him. And Jesus Christ is coming alive in me. I jumped off the table, fought 8 men to get into the shower and wash my stuff. And they said, don't let him get in the shower. There's no hot water. And I started screaming, then Jesus Christ is coming alive in me. Jumped out of the shower. I said, I got to go tell the world. They told me, no, George, you don't have any clothes on. They stopped me at the door. They put me back on the dressing room table. And I heard a voice said, I come to my friends and they don't believe me. I come to my brothers and they don't understand me. It could have been vice versa, brother and friends. And I started screaming, don't let Jesus go. Don't let Jesus go. And then the voice said, now go to my Father, which is in heaven. And it was over. I'm on that dressing room table after carrying on like that. Kissed everybody in the dressing room, told them I loved them. And this is the most embarrassing moment because that feeling of what I thought I'd be feeling when I became champ of the world, I felt it on that room that night. I was somebody for a moment. And then the voice left. I said, "You witness a miracle and you're not going to believe it." And they said, "Mm-hmm." Down to emergency, they took me to the hospital. And I was there looking at bing, 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 because I heard if it goes flat, that's it. And I had a second chance to live.
Wow. So that was your first encounter with Jesus.
Mm-hmm. That was my, and a second chance to live. I was dead.
Yeah.
People ask me, what is it? I was actually dead, and I know I was dead. And I got a second chance. And you're never the same anymore.
So did everybody think you were crazy?
Certainly. There were family and friends said, after a while, said, because I'm on the street corner preaching, testifying, you should have seen me in church, and didn't care about anything. I left my boxing career. My mom even told me, she said, they were telling her family and friends, maybe we need to put George away. She said she was hearing all of these things, and she asked him, can he still drive? They said, yeah, he drives. She said, he's okay. That's the only thing that kept her from teaming up on me to put me away. Because I stopped. For 10 years, I didn't even make a fist. I didn't box. I didn't think about any of that. All I wanted to do was tell everybody what happened to me. There's truly a living God. I thought it was a joke for poor people. I really thought. Because you see people who are poor singing those songs and going to church, or if a guy got in trouble, lost his wife or something, you see him going to church. Right. Or a lady, a son going to prison, she's going to church praying. I wasn't in that condition, so I never thought there was a God. I really didn't think it was real. I didn't until that night. I knew it was real.
So how many kids did you have at that time?
Started having kids, man, about 3 children when it first happened to me.
So here you are with family, with kids, bills to pay. You started the community center, right? And then, which is really well depicted in the movie. You start the community center, and then all of a sudden you realize you got to go into boxing again.
I literally ran out of money.
Yeah. Wow.
So I was invited to Georgia. And the guy asked me for my youth center because I couldn't keep supporting it. I just didn't have money. And so I started to go out and speak, and people would make donations. So I'm in Georgia at a little church, and the guy told me I would come down for 3 days. He'd help me raise money. So when I got there, the third day, he started asking for an offering. He said, let's help George Foreman and his kids down there. And he counted the money. He said, we can give more than this. Come on. And I was embarrassed. Because here I am, a guy who had Rolls Royce, swimming pools, all the things all over the world. And there I am asking those people who really didn't have for money. And I made up my mind right then I would never ask anyone for anything ever again. I was going back to boxing. I said, I'm going to be heavyweight champion of the world again. I'm going back to boxing. After 10 years out of boxing, I made up my mind to re-enter.
So to wrap this up, I just want to ask you, this movie's about to come out, and you've been a wonderful pastor for the past 45 years, so encouraging, you're a great family man, but I got to just ask you, legacy, what do you hope that you're remembered for?
Well, what I really do is with me every day. I just want my kids, my family to remember me as a good dad, good grandpa. That's most important. Every human being's got that opportunity, and I'm no different from anyone else. I'm not interested in greatness. People ask me all the time, who's the greatest boxer? There's enough room for everybody and enough time for everybody to be great. So, but I just want to, for my family to remember me as a good guy, good dad.
And the world's certainly going to remember you for a long, long time because all your kids are your boys are named George.
Grandsons too.
George, thank you so much. It's been great catching up with you, and I really appreciate you. And I know great things are going to happen with this film.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.